We had conversations with more than 900 women between the ages of 50 and 70, and we asked them a simple but revealing question. When you notice a man who is over 60, what part of him do you actually notice first? The answers came quickly, but what stood out even more was the reaction before the answers. Many of these women smiled in a knowing way, almost as if they had heard this question misunderstood for years. They explained that most men tend to guess completely wrong. When asked to predict what women notice first, men often point to things like height, chest, shoulders, or overall muscle. But the women we spoke to made it clear those assumptions miss what truly matters at this stage of life. They are not comparing men to younger versions anymore. Instead, their attention shifts towards something deeper, something that reflects how a man is living now. As the conversations continued, a deeper pattern began to emerge. The women weren't focused on youth or physical perfection the way many men assume. Instead, they were quietly observing signs that reveal how a man treats himself and how present he is in his own life. One woman explained it in a way that stayed with me. She said that when she sees a man now, she's no longer thinking about how young he looks. What she's really asking herself is whether he still carries a sense of life within him. That idea came up repeatedly in different forms. What these women were describing goes beyond appearance. It reflects something psychologists often refer to as non-verbal presence. Before a man even speaks, his body communicates subtle information about his habits, his discipline, his mindset, and his attitude toward aging. These signals are quiet, but they are powerful, and they shape first impressions almost instantly. Some of these signals appear the moment a man walks into a room, almost like an instant impression that forms without effort. Others reveal themselves within a few seconds, as the eyes begin to notice small details that most people overlook. In this video, we are going to break down the 7 specific body areas that women consistently mention throughout the survey. Each one may seem simple on the surface, but every detail carries a deeper psychological meaning that reflects how a man lives his life day to day. These are not random observations, they are patterns that repeat across different people and experiences. Interestingly, one particular body signal stood out far more than the rest, mentioned by a majority of the women as the most telling of all. But before we move into that list, take a moment to share where you are watching from today. It is always interesting to see how widely these ideas connect with people. One thing became very clear as we listened to these women. The way they notice men after 50 is not the same as it was earlier in life. When they were younger, attraction often followed more obvious patterns. Physical features like height, muscle tone, and youthful energy carried more weight. But over time, that focus begins to shift in a very natural way. Attention moves away from surface-level traits and towards something more meaningful. Instead of asking whether a man looks young, the question becomes whether he still takes care of himself. That difference is subtle, but it changes everything. It shows up in the body without effort. The way a man stands, how he moves, the small details he maintains, and the energy he carries all begin to tell a story. A man who is still engaged with life reflects it in his presence, while another may unintentionally reveal withdrawal or fatigue through the same quiet signals. You begin to notice that these signals are not loud or dramatic, yet when they come together, they paint a very clear picture. A man who is still active and engaged tends to move with intention. His steps look steady rather than heavy, his posture remains open instead of closed off, and his gestures feel natural rather than forced. There is a sense of ease in how he carries himself. On the other hand, another man of the same age might give off a completely different impression. His shoulders may lean forward, his movements might seem slower or weighed down, and his expression can appear distant or disconnected. These differences are often subtle, but women pick up on them almost immediately. They understand that aging is a natural process, and there is no expectation to look like a younger man. What they are really noticing is whether a man is still connected to life and moving through it with purpose and awareness. As these patterns became clearer, it was easy to see that the small details begin to carry more weight than most men realize. Things that might seem insignificant at first glance start to communicate something deeper. The hands, for example, can quietly reflect grooming habits and attention to personal care. Posture begins to show whether a man maintains daily discipline or has gradually let it slip. Even facial expression can hint at mindset, whether someone feels engaged and positive or withdrawn and disconnected. The way a man walks across a room also becomes a signal, revealing subtle clues about his energy, balance, and sense of purpose. Psychologists often describe this as behavioral signaling, where the body reflects the routines and habits repeated over time. Once you understand this, a powerful realization sets in. Attraction at this stage is no longer about chasing youth, but about showing, through consistent behavior, that you still value yourself and your life. Once that idea settles in, the first signal the women consistently brought up starts to make perfect sense, and that is posture. At first, a few of them even laughed when they mentioned it, almost as if it sounded too simple to matter. But the more they explained, the clearer it became why posture stands out so strongly. It is often the very first thing anyone notices when a man enters a space. Before attention moves to his face or what he is wearing, the body already tells a story. The position of the shoulders, the angle of the head, and the alignment of the back all send immediate messages. When the shoulders fall forward, the head drops, and the upper back curves inward, it can give the impression of someone withdrawing from the world. On the other hand, a man who stands upright with a relaxed, open posture naturally appears more present, aware, and connected to everything around him. More than 70% of the women pointed out that posture reveals more about a man's daily life than his physical strength ever could. A man might have spent years building muscle, but if his head tilts forward and his back collapses inward, the impression shifts immediately. Instead of confidence, his body can suggest tiredness, stress, or a gradual withdrawal from life. On the other hand, there are men who may not have a perfect physique, yet they stand upright with their chest open and their head balanced. That simple difference changes how they are perceived in a powerful way. It gives off a sense of alertness and quiet confidence without saying a word. What makes this even more interesting is that posture is shaped by everyday habits. The way you sit, stand, and carry yourself throughout the day slowly becomes your natural position, and people notice that more than you think. The next area the women spoke about often catches men off guard, and that is the hands. Several of them said hands reveal more truth than almost any other part of the body, not because of size or strength, but because of what they show about daily habits. Hands are always visible in small, everyday moments. Whether you are holding a cup, reaching for something, or greeting someone, they are right there in plain sight. Because of that, they quietly reflect how much attention a man gives to the details of his life. Women notice whether the nails are kept clean and even, whether the skin looks cared for or ignored. It is not about perfection or trying to hide signs of age. It is about effort. Even simple care taken consistently sends a message that a man still values himself and pays attention to the little things that often speak the loudest. One woman explained it in a very direct way. She said that hands tell her whether a man is still paying attention to the small parts of his life. As people age, the hands often show changes earlier than other areas, but that was not what concerned them. What stood out was the level of care. Keeping nails trimmed and skin in decent condition does not require much time, yet it reflects consistency and self-awareness. Some women even mentioned that signs of real work, like light calluses, can be appealing because they suggest activity and usefulness. It gives the impression of someone who still engages with the world in a practical way. On the other hand, neglected hands can quietly raise questions. If something so visible is ignored, it makes people wonder what other areas might also be overlooked. In a subtle way, hands become a small but powerful signal of how a man manages his everyday life.